If you do own a DJI Neo 2, there are probably quite a few things it can do that you either don't know or you simply haven't tried yet. And my name's Andrew and I've been flying DJI drones since 2016. So in this video I've put together 100 tips covering everything from the basic settings and safer flying through to camera, tracking, flight modes and a few features that are surprisingly easy to miss. And these aren't just copied out of the manual, they're things I've actually picked up from using the DJI Neo 2. And I will cover everything from the drone only mode, the DJI Fly app, quick shots, resolution and frame rates, voice and gesture control, flying with just your phone, battery health, safety settings, using the controller, pro mode, cruise control, button customization, flying over water and a lot more. Now the video isn't sponsored by DJI, everything's come purely based on my own experience of what actually works. I may have missed some things out, and if I have, please don't tell me because it's just going to make me feel bad and it's not going to change the video. So tip 1 is all about using the drone only mode for the right job. Now drone only is all about speed and convenience, and if I'm out walking, hiking, cycling, that's the mode I use the most. But if I'm filming a YouTube video and I want full control of the camera, then obviously I will switch to the DJI Fly app or the controller. The trick is simply using the right flying method for the shot that you want. And really you need to learn every flight mode. Now one mistake I see all the time is people finding one flight mode that they like and then using that and never trying any others. Each flight mode does create a different type of shot. Follow is brilliant for everyday tracking, rocket is great for revealing a location, circle creates a dramatic orbit, and direction track gives you a much more cinematic side-on view. So try spending an afternoon using them all. And the more familiar you become with each mode, the more creative your videos are going to be. And when you are out, try starting every flight in an open area. Now, the Neo 2 does track incredibly well, but you don't need to make life difficult for it. So try and avoid launching next to trees, buildings or parked cars. Give it an open space and you'll avoid a lot of the tracking problems before they even start. And also give the drone time to lock onto you. Now this caught me out a lot when I first bought the Neo 2. As soon as I took off, I'd start walking. So instead, try waiting until the red light comes on before moving away. It's only going to take a few seconds, but it will make tracking much smoother and far more reliable. And obviously you need to think about your background as well. Now the drone isn't just filming you, it's filming everything that's behind you too. So before you launch, take a quick look around. Could be that you could move a few meters to one side and then having the sea behind you instead of a car park, or use a woodland path instead of an empty field. Sometimes that small change can completely transform the shot. And remember as well to walk naturally. Once the drone starts following you, trust it. Stop looking over your shoulder every few seconds, just try and walk normally. And the footage will look much more relaxed and natural. And remember as well to use the right tracking position. So for follow mode, I normally use flat or high with a distance of medium or far. And that's going to give the drone more room to react, keeps you better framed and improves the obstacle avoidance. It's also going to reduce the amount of sky that's in the shot, so your exposure stays much more consistent. Plus, if you are cycling or moving fast, it gives the drone more time to react. And when you are doing it, plan your route. Before you launch, think about where you're going to walk. Try and avoid low branches, narrow gaps and busy paths where possible. Giving the drone a clear route makes tracking smoother and saves you a lot of frustration later on. And remember as well to stay within the tracking range. Now one mistake beginners make is trying to outrun the drone. It can only track you if it can actually see you, so don't disappear behind any trees or around sharp corners. Keep a steady pace and the tracking will be much more reliable. And then when you are using some of the tracking modes for orbit, for example, you want to try to do this from the side. Now, just like the follow mode, where you start orbit makes a big difference. Starting from the side or the rear, ideally with the drone facing towards the sun, is going to be the best option. That way, the best part of the shot is always going to be in the middle of the clip instead of right at the beginning or at the end, and it means you're going to get much more usable footage. And let the drone finish the shot. This is a mistake I see all the time. As soon as the drone starts coming back, people try and catch it. Instead, let the quick shot finish completely until it's hovering in front of you, and then when the red light has gone out, then take the drone. You'll end up with a much cleaner clip and you won't accidentally stop the recording before it's finished. Now when it does come back to you, remember to master the palm landing. Now I know that palm landing doesn't sound very exciting, but once you've started using it, you'll wonder why you ever go back to ground landing. And it's perfect conditions like sand, wet grass or gravel, anywhere where you don't want dirt getting into the motors or on the camera. So you just need to hold your hand out flat and let the drone land itself. Another tip you need to do is to film in good lighting. Now when you're filming drone only, you don't have any manual camera controls, so the good lighting becomes even more important. Wherever you can, film in the early morning or later in the afternoon when the light is softer, and try and keep the sun behind the drone so you're well lit, and avoid the harsh midday sun if possible. Good lighting is going to improve your footage more than any other camera setting. Now, as I said, drone only is brilliant, but it's not the only answer for every situation. If you want to see exactly what goes on and what the camera sees, then you need to change the settings or fly manually, and then it's going to be time to connect through to your phone. You still don't need to carry a controller, but you will get a live view with more flight options and access to the drone settings. Now, if you do this, you want to make sure, first of all, that you have got your firmware updated. The DJI Fly app is also where you're going to update the drone. Now, DJI does regularly release bug fixes and sometimes add new features, so it's worth checking every now and again for any firmware updates, and I would recommend updating it at home rather than on the Wi-Fi just before a flight. Now, when you're using the Fly app, there is one feature on there that you really need to learn, and that's where Find My Drone is. Hopefully you're never going to need it, but if the drone lands somewhere unexpected, Find My Drone will show its last recorded position. And it's worth knowing where the feature is before something goes wrong. Another thing you need to do is to set up the quick shots before you leave the house. So before heading out, spend a minute setting up the quick shot preferences in the DJI Fly app. Things like tracking distance and flight height can all be adjusted in advance. That way, when you arrive, you're ready to launch instead of wasting time and batteries changing the settings. And then once you're using the DJI Fly app, you can choose the recording resolution. Now, if you've got enough storage, I would recommend filming in 4K. Even if you're going to export in 1080p, you're normally going to get a sharper image and more flexibility when editing if you use 4K. Also try and choose your frame rate before you take off. Now you can record in 30, 50, 60 or even 100 frames a second, and for most of my videos I tend to use 30 frames because it gives natural looking motion. But if I know I'm going to be slowing down the footage later on, I will tend to switch to 60 frames a second before I take off. It's much easier to decide before the flight than wish you changed it after the flight. Also, because you're using your phone, then you can use your phone as a camera monitor. And one of the biggest advantages of this is that you can see exactly what the drone sees. So instead of guessing your composition, you can frame your shot properly and spot any distractions before you hit record. And then when you have finished recording, don't forget to review your footage before you leave. So this means that you can check your images to make sure that they are sharp and well framed and that everything's actually been recorded. If something isn't quite right, it's far easier to reshoot while you're still there rather than having to go back. And then when you've done this, download your best clips. Now, if you've captured a shot and you're really pleased with it, download it to your phone straight away while you're out. It's going to give you an instant backup, and it means that it's ready to edit or share as soon as you get home. And also flying with the DJI app, you need to know the limits of manual flight. The DJI Fly app does give you much more control than drone only, but remember that you are flying only with virtual joysticks. Now they will work well, but they're never as smooth or precise as using real sticks, and you are going to be limited by the Wi-Fi range. So just keep those limits in mind when you are flying manually. Another thing to remember is to turn your phone sideways. Now this one's simple, but it does make a big difference. Always fly with your phone in landscape mode. That way you're going to get a much larger view, making it easier to frame your shots, judge the distance and spot any obstacles, and practice before you actually start recording. So before you hit the record, spend a minute or two getting used to the virtual joysticks. And then once you're comfortable and how they respond, then start filming. This means again that your movements will be smoother and so will your footage. Okay, so that's 25 down and only 75 to go. Hopefully you've already picked a few things up that you didn't know. And just a quick reminder that this video isn't sponsored, and if you find it useful, a like and subscribe is probably the easiest way you can support the channel. If you'd like to support it a little further, there's also an option below for buy me a coffee, and that's in the description. Even £1 or $2 or $1 or €1 when clubbed together helps towards new equipment and helps me spend more time making videos like this. Okay, that's enough of that. And now we're back onto number 26. So we're still using the manual flight, and my tip for this is to use gentle thumb movements. Virtual joysticks are more sensitive than a physical controller. So instead of making large movements, use small, gentle inputs. The smoother your thumbs move, the smoother your footage is going to be. And try and keep your fingers on the screen. Try not to lift your thumbs off the virtual joysticks when you're flying, because keeping contact with the controls helps you make smoother movements and avoid sudden jerks. And you could also try combining two movements together. So for example, you could combine a gentle forward movement with a slow yaw or a climb. Even with virtual joysticks, combining movement creates a much more cinematic footage than simply flying in a straight line. But don't try to overcomplicate your shots. The DJI Fly app is brilliant for simple cinematic movements. Long straight flies, gentle reveals, slow tracking shots usually look far better than trying to do too many complicated moves at once with the virtual joysticks. And you also want to try flying closer than you think. And this is because you haven't got the precision of a controller and judging the distance is much harder. So rather than flying a long way, try and stay a little bit closer so you can clearly see both the drone and the subject you're filming. And you also need to know when to switch to a controller. The DJI Fly app is great for casual flying. It's simple, convenient and surprisingly capable. But if you're flying regularly, creating YouTube videos, then I would recommend using a dedicated controller. It's going to give you smoother, greater precision, and it really takes flying the DJI Neo 2 to a new level. But before we move on to controllers, there are a few more ways to control the drone. One of the features that really stands out on the Neo 2 is voice control. Now, it may sound like a gimmick, but after using it for a while, I have found it to be genuinely useful. Whenever your hands are busy, voice control really comes into its own. So you need to turn on voice control before you need it. Before heading out, make sure that the voice control on the DJI app is enabled. And it's easier to spend 30 seconds setting it up at home than having to do this and searching through the menus when you're actually out filming. Also, learn the commands. Voice control works best when you already know what to say. So try spending again a few minutes learning the commands right before your first flight. Once they become second nature, you're going to spend more time getting the shot and less time remembering what words you actually need to say. And also, speak clearly but not loudly. One mistake people make is shouting at the drone, and you don't need to. Just speak in a clear voice that's natural. Only raise your voice if it's particularly windy or noisy where you are. And as I said, using the voice commands are really useful when your hands are full. And this is where it really shines. Now, it could be you carrying a backpack, holding walking poles, or riding a bike, and being able to control the drone without stopping is incredibly convenient. It's one of those features you don't realise you'll use until you've actually tried it. Now, you could also try using an external microphone, but remember your phone still needs to be able to hear you. If it's buried in your pocket or surrounded by background noise, it's going to struggle to recognise any of the commands. So a wired or a wireless mic can make a big difference. And also know when not to use it. Now, voice control isn't always the best option. In crowded places, strong winds, or when you need some more precise control, you are better off using the DJI Fly app or a dedicated controller. So think of voice control as another useful tool, but not a replacement. And like some of the other modes, practice before you rely on it. Like every Neo 2 feature, voice control does get better with practice. So spend 5-10 minutes trying the commands in an open area. And once they become second nature, you will probably end up using voice control far more than you expected. So voice control is fantastic when you want to keep your hands free. But there is another feature that's just as useful if you create content on your own, and that's voice record. And use voice record for walk and talk videos. So the Neo 2 doesn't just record the video, it can record your voice as well. So whether you're filming a review, a travelogue or a tutorial, voice record lets you explain exactly what you're doing as you fly. And this means it'll make your videos feel much more natural and personal. Now, one clever feature the voice record has is that it reduces the drone propeller noise, leaving your voice much clearer. It's not going to replace a professional microphone, but for quick videos or social media content, it does a surprisingly good job. And just like voice control, you need to speak clearly and naturally. So there's no need to shout. Just, again, speak at your normal pace and avoid turning away from your phone. The clearer your voice, the better the audio is going to be. So this means it's perfect for solo creators. So if you film on your own, voice record saves you from carrying any extra audio equipment. For tutorials, travel videos or behind the scene clips, it's a quick and easy way to add commentary while keeping your setup lightweight. But remember, only record the audio when you actually need it. And this is because the Neo 2 has limited storage and audio files are going to take up some extra space. So if you don't need voice record, then switch it off. If you do, then you need to export the footage through the DJI Fly app. And this is because the video and the voice files are stored as separate files. So if you download them directly to the Fly app, they are combined automatically for you, and then you can transfer them straight to your computer. Otherwise, you're going to need to sync them together manually during the editing. Now, if you don't want to speak to the drone at all, there is another option. The Neo 2 can also recognise hand gestures, allowing you to capture photos and videos without touching a phone or a controller. And that's called gesture control. Unlike voice control, I don't tend to use it on every flight, but when the situation is right, it is really a quick, simple and surprisingly useful way to fly the drone. So I would suggest learning the gestures. So before heading out, spend a few minutes learning what each gesture does. Then once you've tried them a few times, they are quickly going to become second nature. But remember to face the drone, because gesture control can only work if the drone can actually see you. So remember to face the camera, keep your hands visible and avoid blocking them with your body or any other objects. Also, give yourself some space. Gesture control does work best in an open area, and if you're surrounded by people, trees or obstacles, the drone may struggle to recognise the gestures consistently. Now, as you know, flying drones isn't a fashion show. And God knows I'm not really a style guru. I tend to wear shorts and t-shirts all year round, even during the winter. But wearing clothing that stands out really makes a difference. The Neo 2 uses AI to recognise and track you. So if your clothing blends into the background, tracking can be less reliable. You don't need to wear bright orange, although it is my favourite colour. And unfortunately, when I do, it's usually followed by the words, "For God's sake, grow up," coming from my wife. But wearing colours with contrast that go against your surroundings simply makes it easier for the drone to recognise you. And this tip is where I use gesture control the most. So use gesture control for selfies, and I don't just mean photos. If you're travelling alone or you don't want to hand your phone to someone else, gesture control makes it easy to grab a quick selfie or a short video. It's also great for group photos because everyone can be in the picture. So don't rush the gesture. One mistake I made when I first started using gesture control was moving too quickly. Make the gesture clearly and then hold it for a few seconds, and that's going to give the drone enough time to recognise what you're asking it to do. Okay, so that's number 50, so we're officially halfway through. Again, none of this is sponsored by DJI, and these are simply the settings, features and tricks that I found useful from actually flying the DJI Neo 2. So if the video is helping, give it a like and consider subscribing. It costs absolutely nothing, but it does make a surprisingly big difference to the channel. And if you want to keep me supplied with drones, batteries and probably too much coffee, there is a link for Buy Me a Coffee below. So right, there's 50 more to go. But you also need to know when to use something else. So like voice control, gesture control is brilliant for quick photos and short clips, but it isn't always the best situation. If you need precise framing, manual flying or full camera control, then you should really switch over to the DJI Fly app or a dedicated controller. So think of gesture control as the quickest and easiest option, but not necessarily the most powerful. Now, none of anything I've said in part 1 will matter if your battery runs out halfway through a flight. So the good news is that there are a few simple habits that will not only help you get the most out of every battery, but also keep them performing much longer. The first thing is to check the battery health regularly. So before you take off, have a quick look at the battery level, check there aren't any warning messages in the DJI Fly app. It only takes a few seconds, but it could save you from cutting a flight short. Also look at labelling your batteries. If you own more than one battery, number them with a small sticker or a marker pen. And that's going to make it much easier to rotate them evenly, and it also helps you identify a battery if one ever starts behaving differently from the others. It also means you're not overusing the same battery time and time again and ignore the others. Next is to keep the battery cool in summer. Now, temperature does have a big impact on battery performance, and if you're flying in summer, try and keep your spare batteries away from the sun, tucked in a rucksack or something until you need them. Because using a hot battery that's been baked in the sun can cause no end of problems, so try and keep them cool. But also the reverse is true. So you also need to keep the batteries warm in winter. So as I said, temperature has a big impact on battery performance, and if you are flying in winter, keep your spare batteries in a pocket or inside your jacket until you need them. A warm battery will give you a better performance than one that's been sitting getting cold in a backpack all morning. Also use the low battery warning as a reminder. Don't wait for the drone to force a landing. When you get the first low battery warning, start thinking about finishing the shot and heading back. That way you're going to be landing on newer terms rather than the drones. And don't wait until the battery is zero either. It can be tempting to squeeze every last minute of the battery, especially when the actual flight time is only 9 or 10 minutes, but I wouldn't recommend it. Normally, I do tend to land with around about 15 or 20% remaining. Although it does sound a lot, in reality, it's only a minute or two or even less. But it does give you a safety margin if the wind picks up or you need a second attempt at landing, and it's much kinder to the battery in the long run. And please let the batteries cool before charging. After a flight, the battery is going to be warm. So rather than putting it straight on charge, let it cool down to room temperature first. Charging a hot battery can shorten its lifespan, so a little bit of patience is really going to pay off in the future. Also, you don't want to store your batteries fully charged. If you're not planning on flying for a while, don't leave your batteries sitting somewhere at 100%. Batteries last longer when they're stored at around about 40 to 60%, and the DJI intelligent batteries will normally discharge themselves automatically after a few days. And remember to carry a spare battery. If you only buy one accessory for your DJI Neo 2, make it an extra battery. The flight time always seems to disappear quicker than you expect, and having a spare battery means that you can keep filming instead of packing up just as the lighting gets good. So looking after the batteries means that you will spend a lot more time flying, and if you want a complete breakdown on battery usage and care, there's another video up here that you can watch. Now, if you want to get the very best out of this little drone, there's one more option of control, and that's the dedicated controller, because it transforms the way that the DJI Neo 2 flies. It gives you much smoother control, greater precision, and it opens up creative shots that are hard to achieve when you're using the drone or the app alone. So if you are serious about improving your flying, capturing more cinematic videos, then this is the setup that I'd recommend. Now, I use the RC2, but it's the same features basically on the RCN3. So the first one is going to be configuring the controller before flying. And one thing I often do is spend a minute or two configuring everything before I take off. Doing all those checks on the ground means you can concentrate on flying once the drone is in the air. So first of all, you will adjust your safety settings. And this is one of the biggest benefits of flying with the DJI controller, because you've got access to the safety menu. Here you can adjust the return to home height, the maximum altitude and the maximum distance. So if you've left it too low and you lose the drone signal, it could head straight towards the normal obstacle that's between you and coming home. Also, try to avoid crashing. So to do this, you want to make sure that your obstacle avoidance is switched on and is on the section that you actually want to use. Now, personally, I prefer bypass, but sometimes brake is the better option. And you can change this via the screen by using the icon on the top right. Another thing I'd recommend is to turn on the grid lines for the rule of thirds. Now, if you only make one change to the settings in the DJI Fly app, make it this one, because it makes it much easier to keep your horizon level and to place your subject in a much stronger position within the frame. It's a simple setting, but again, it does make a surprisingly big difference. And then use the controller to perfect your composition. So rather than rushing the shot, stop for a minute, check your framing, level the horizon, and think about your composition before you record. Again, it's one of those things that only takes a few seconds, planning the shot, but it will save minutes in editing. And use the subject tracking only when it makes sense. Now, subject tracking is brilliant, but don't feel that you have to use it all the time. Sometimes a manually flown shot looks much smoother and more natural. So think of tracking as another tool rather than the answer to every situation. And when you are flying, slow down your stick movements, because one of the biggest mistakes new pilots make is moving the sticks too aggressively. Small, gentle movements almost always produce better looking footage. So if you think you are flying slowly enough, slow it down a little bit more. And the Neo 2 will instantly look much more cinematic. And remember that you need to fly with a story in mind. So before taking off, ask yourself one question. What are you trying to show? Is it going to be a castle, a mountain trail, a beach, or someone riding a bike? Having a plan before you actually launch the drone gives you much better footage than simply looking around for something interesting. And you want to see about shooting in segments. And by this, I mean don't try to shoot everything at once. Pick your subject and stick to it. So maybe 20 to 30 seconds max, not 2 or 3 minutes, because no one wants to watch 2 or 3 minutes of you flying along a beach. And mix manual flying with the intelligent flight modes. And some of the best edits combine both. So start with a manually flown reveal, switch to a follow, and then finish with a circle or a rocket quick shot. And mixing up different styles of footage makes your videos much more engaging. And you also want to try about shooting from different angles for the same shot. So if you're walking, do a follow, followed by a side shot and then a dolly track, and then combine them together to make a much more interesting shot. But don't stop recording too soon. Once you finish the shot, keep recording for another 5 or 10 seconds. And those extra seconds give you much more flexibility when you're editing and make it much easier to cut the footage to music. Now, when you are using a controller, you need to turn up the screen brightness. Now, this does sound obvious, but it's surprising how many people forget to do this. On a bright day, a dim screen makes it difficult for you to judge framing and your exposure. So before you fly, turn your phone or your controller's brightness up. And that simple change can make flying much easier. Also check your frame rate, resolution and aspect. I've had times where I've done a day's filming only to find out that I filmed some in 1080p and others in 4K, or some in portrait mode instead of landscape. So make sure you check, otherwise you would have wasted a full day. And always do a screen record if you can. It means that if something goes wrong, you're going to have a record. So just swipe down on the RC2 if you have one, and there'll be the option there for screen record. Okay, so that's 75 done. So if you're still here, you're either finding it useful or you are determined just to make it to 100. Either way, thank you. As always, I'm not sponsored by DJI, which means I can tell you exactly what I like, what I don't like, and what I'd actually recommend. So I'd appreciate it if you could do the like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. And if you would like to help me out further, there's also an option for buy me a coffee in the description below. Even £1 or £2 when it's all clubbed together makes a massive difference towards the purchase of new equipment and lets me spend more time making videos like this. Okay, so now it's the final 25, so tip number 76. Okay, back to it then. So number 76, underexpose your image. If you're shooting in auto and you have the exposure to -0.3 or -0.7, that's going to be a bonus, because if an image is underexposed, you can always bring the shadows back in post. If an image is overexposed, then you're stuffed and you can't get any of the blown out highlights back. Now, one setting I'd always recommend turning on is overexposure warning or the zebra stripes. So if parts of your image are too bright and you're losing detail, stripe lines are going to appear in those areas, and it's a quick way to spot blown out highlights before you start recording. Now, I use this all the time, especially when I'm filming skies or over water, to make sure that I don't lose any important detail. Another thing you want to do is to use the histogram. So the histogram is one of the most important and useful exposure tools on the drone. So instead of judging the brightness from the screen, use the histogram. If the graph is pushed to the outer edge, you're probably either losing the details in the shadows or the highlights. And it's a much more accurate way to expose your footage correctly, especially when you're in bright sunlight. Now, this one is more for doing things like social media. So you want to turn on the frame guides for the 9:16. So if you do create content for YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels, TikTok, turn on the frame guides. The guides will show you what the safe area is for vertical shooting while your drone is still recorded in the full 16:9. This means that you can frame your image and subject correctly for social media without losing the flexibility of a widescreen recording. Now, I use this all the time because it means I can create one flight that works for both YouTube and vertical platforms without having to rotate the gimbal or fly the shot twice. Now, whichever controller you has either function buttons or custom buttons which can enable shortcuts. So use these to your advantage and add whatever functions you use the most. And for me, I always have one set to cruise control, and use cruise control for smooth cinematic shots. And it's perfect when you want to do a long, smooth, consistent movement. So instead of consistently trying to hold the sticks perfectly set at the speed and height that you want, actively use cruise control and let the drone maintain the movement for you. It's one of the easiest ways that your footage is to look more professional. And there is another video up here if you want to know more about cruise control. And then also combine cruise control with stick movements. So don't just let the drone fly in a straight line. While cruise control is keeping the drone moving smoothly, you can concentrate on gently tilting the gimbal or doing a slow yawn so the drone is going towards your subject, or doing something which is more of a reveal. And splitting the workload like this means that you are going to get much smoother cinematic shots. So you also want to see about using cruise control for reveals. Now, one of my favourite uses is, as I just said, reveal shots. So set the drone moving smoothly and then slowly bring a subject into view by adjusting the gimbal or flying past a tree, a building or a rock. And because the drone maintains a constant speed, the reveal looks much smoother and far more controlled than trying to fly it manually. Now, for the best quality, you need to switch over to Pro mode. So if you are serious about improving your footage, don't be afraid to switch from Auto to Pro. Auto is brilliant when you're starting out, but Pro mode does give you more control over things like the ISO and the shutter speed. It takes a little bit more practice, but the reward is much more consistent footage that's easier to edit later. So when it comes to the ISO, you want to keep that as low as possible, because the ISO controls the camera's sensitivity to light. So the higher the ISO, the brighter the image. But the trade-off is that you're going to get more digital noise and a softer looking picture. So whenever possible, keep your ISO at the lowest possible value and then adjust your shutter speed or use an ND filter instead. And try following the 180-degree rule if you're using ND filters, because that's going to give you really nice smooth cinematic motion. So as a guide, set your shutter speed to roughly double that of your frame rate. So if you're filming at 30 frames a second, aim for a shutter speed of around about 1/60th a second. And if you're filming at 60 frames a second, aim for a shutter speed of 1/20th of a second. Now, the ND filters I use are the ones from Freewell, and there is a link in the description below. Now, you also need to be careful about where you fly, and flying over water is one of the most dangerous. So if you are flying over water, keep a close eye on your battery level. You don't want the drone deciding it's time to land when it's still over a lake, a river or the sea. So give yourself plenty of time to get back to shore and land safely rather than pushing the battery to the limits. You also need to fly higher than you think. Water can sometimes confuse the drone's downwards vision sensors because the reflections and a lack of texture make it hard to judge the height accurately. So when flying over water, I do tend to avoid skimming the surface unless I really need to. Keeping that extra little bit of height gives you much better safety margin, especially when there's waves, reflections or changing light conditions. Now, you also need to watch the wind speed over water because wind is often stronger over water than it feels on shore. And because your Neo 2 has to work much harder and hold its position, the battery is going to drain a lot faster. So before heading out over water, check the wind conditions, always fly out into the wind and return with the wind, and keep an eye on your battery level and always leave plenty of power to make sure that you come back safely. It's much better to cut the flight short than to risk running low on the battery power over water. And now finally, a section that applies to all scenarios. So number 90 is to fly during the golden hour, because the hour after sunrise and the hour before sunset produces the best light of the day. The light is going to be softer, the colours richer and the shadows less harsh. Even an average looking location can look fantastic during the golden hour. Now, the next one sounds obvious, but that's to keep your lens clean. And fingerprints and smudges can completely ruin your footage. So before every flight, give the camera lens a quick wipe down with a microfiber cloth. It only takes a second, but the difference can be surprising. Also watch the weather. Don't just look at whether or not it's going to rain. Check the wind as well. The Neo 2 is a lightweight drone, so strong winds will affect the battery life, the tracking and the overall smoothness of your footage. So if in doubt, wait for calmer conditions. Also, only buy the accessories that actually matter. It's easy to spend money on accessories that you don't really need. Personally, I prioritise a battery, charging hub, extra propellers and a good carrying case and maybe some ND filters. Those are the things you're going to use all the time. Now, one of the biggest tips as well is don't worry about flying perfectly. Every drone pilot makes mistakes. Everyone has shaky flights, missed shots or lands in the wrong place. But the more you fly, the more natural the experience becomes. So don't be afraid to get out there and practice. And when you are, respect other people. One thing that's easy to forget is that not everyone likes drones as much as we do. So be considerate, avoid flying too close to people and always respect the local rules and privacy, and keep the drone within the visual line of sight, because there's always going to be someone there who wants to report you for flying the drone just because they're not happy. So don't give them the opportunity. It's not worth it at the end of the day. Plus, it's only a small drone, so do you really need to go miles out? Now, another thing I didn't bank on doing, but one thing that I have learned the hard way is to learn the emergency stop. And this is important if the drone gets into difficulty, maybe in a tree or somewhere where the propellers can cause damage. So learn how to shut them down. And you won't improve by watching YouTube videos, so you need to fly regularly. You are going to improve by flying. Even if it's only 10 minutes in a local park, every flight is going to build your confidence and improve your flying skills. And don't forget to have fun. It's easy to get caught up chasing the perfect shot or worrying about settings. The reason you bought the DJI Neo 2 in the first place was to have fun. It's an incredible little drone, so enjoy flying it. And number 100 is to use the right flying method, so I'm going to finish where I started. The Neo 2 gives you 3 different ways to fly the drone. You've got drone only when you want speed and convenience. You've got the fly app when you want more control without carrying extra gear. And then you've got a dedicated controller when you want the best flying experience and the best footage. And learning when to use each is probably the biggest tip I can give any Neo 2 owner. And that's it, 100 tips for the DJI Neo 2. If you've made it all the way to the end, hopefully you have picked up at least a few things that will help you get more out of this little drone. And as I mentioned in this video, I'm not sponsored by DJI. Everything covered is from my own experience. So if something's good, I'll tell you, and if it isn't, I'll tell you that as well. If the video's helped, hitting that like and subscribe is one of the biggest ways you can help support the channel, and it also means you won't miss any other videos on the DJI Neo 2. If you'd like to support the channel a little further, you'll find a link for Buy Me a Coffee in the description below as well. Anything I get from that is going to go towards new drones, and even small amounts do make a massive difference. But most importantly, thanks for sticking around for all 100 tips. Now go out and actually try some of them. If you want to see any more videos on the DJI Neo 2, or if you've got any questions about the Neo 2, or if you want to see videos on the Mini 4 Pro, the Mini 5 Pro, the Neo 2, the Lito X1, the Hover Aqua or the Hover Aqua Pro Max, also let me know in the comments below and I'll do my best to help you out with them. And again, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you again soon.